We have those of reptiles to birds. Here are early dinosaur fossils, then we can see them evolve into birds slowly. There's the famous Archaeopteryx, and then we have a modern day bird.
What? A bird is a dinosaur with feathers. That definition may sound odd, but it makes sense. The first fossil ever found of an early bird-like animal is in the genus Archaeopteryx and dates from late in the Jurassic period, about 150 million years ago. Now that is a great claim there. That is a great claim that a reptile with scales, completely different type of internal anatomy, can change into a bird. Now, in order to make that claim, they need to produce some real evidence. Well, let's take a look at another biology textbook here. Birds evolved from reptiles during the Jurassic period. So the textbooks seem to have a consensus that the dinosaurs, the small kind of dinosaurs, gradually evolved into birds and are living today. Is there any evidence to support this? Well, not according to some of the leading bird authorities. See, that one textbook said Archaeopteryx was an intermediate link. It's the intermediate link between reptile and birds. Half scales, half feathers. But here's what one of the leading bird authorities in the world has to say. Alan Fiducia. He says this about Archaeopteryx. Paleontologists have tried to turn Archaeopteryx into an earth-bound feathered dinosaur. But it is not. It is a bird, a perching bird. And no amount of paleobabble is going to change that. Don't you love these great scientific words, paleobabble? Because that is exactly what they're putting in our textbooks. Making a claim without being able to provide the physical evidence. Great claims require real evidence. We're being asked to believe somebody else's faith. Why should I believe evolution if they can't provide the evidence? I already have a faith. Why should I accept the faith of evolution? Now, why is Archaeopteryx called an intermediate link? Well, it had claws on its wings. Well, that doesn't really make it intermediate because we have birds living today that have claws on their wings, such as the ostrich, a hoatzin in South America. Well, it had teeth. Well, so do other bird fossils that we find. Pure bird fossils had teeth. Some reptiles have teeth, some don't. Some people have teeth and some don't. Are they evolving? So teeth are not a good idea of whether something's evolving or not. But you know, only birds have feathers. No other creature in this world has feathers. Just birds. And Archaeopteryx had fully formed feathers. Here's what they have to say. Barbara Stahl, Vertebrate History, writes, Problems in Evolution. The imprint they left in the rock, clear and sharp, makes it evident that the feathers of Archaeopteryx were already in Jurassic time exactly like those of birds flying today. How do you go from scales on a reptile to fully formed feathers on a bird? There has to be a mechanism to have that happen. Here's something more in Archaeopteryx. Remember that one textbook author made this statement. The first fossil ever found of an early bird-like animal is in the genus Archaeopteryx and dates from late in the Jurassic period, about 150 million years ago. What he's saying, this is the oldest intermediate link we found between reptile and bird. But wait a minute. Something's not right here. He's saying this is an intermediate link. But when we go to other sources, we read this. A fossil resembling a modern bird has been found in eastern Colorado in the same geologic strata as Archaeopteryx. Now hold on a minute. The textbook author said Archaeopteryx is an intermediate form. How can it be an intermediate form when we already have fully formed birds living at the same time? Why would it still be intermediate? It's not the oldest one. So the textbook author has not done his research. Then Texas Tech researchers have reported discovering birds in rocks dated much older than Archaeopteryx. Something is not right in our textbooks today. Either they're not doing their research or they're deliberately not giving all the information. Now let's think about this. Evolving from a reptile to a bird. The common idea is we've got to grow feathers. Well, hold on a moment. A whole lot more has to happen than that. See, birds and reptiles have complete different types of internal anatomy. There's more than just growing feathers. First of all, we do have to have development of feathers. We have to reform the respiratory system, reform of the skeletal system, going to hollow bones for birds. reform of digestive system, reform of the nervous system, construction of bills and beaks, mastery of nest building, acquisition of flight, development of sound-producing organ, and many other things have to change. Even the whole heart has to change. The circulatory system is completely different between a bird and a reptile. In a reptile, they have a circulatory system much like what we do. The air comes in one set of pipes and goes back out the same set of pipes. But in a bird, it has more of what you call a real circulatory system. The air comes in and circulates all the way around like this and goes back out. How in the world does all those internal anatomy changes take place and that creature survive? There's no evidence this ever happened. The feather is a very complex organ. Very complex organ. We have a central shaft going down these feathers. Then we have these barbs coming out. Then off these barbs we have all these barbules. And then we have these hooks on there. Now these feathers, they slide back and forth like this when that bird is moving. It slides back and forth. And when you have something sliding, it grinds on it and will gradually cause it to fade away or wither and fade and break. How does that bird keep this from happening? Well, it secretes a oily substance there to lubricate these feathers constantly. They don't talk about where that came from. Reptiles don't need that. Somewhere along the line, you've got to have this oily substance to keep those feathers from breaking apart through friction. Then just having feathers won't make a creature fly, won't make that bird fly. See, it's got to have primary feathers, but it also has to have secondary feathers to give it the lift. So it has to have all that. So how did all this happen? Well, here's the latest. I'm going to give you the latest explanation. This is what they're teaching in colleges. This is what they're teaching in some high schools, how a reptile evolved into a bird. Some of these smaller reptiles climbed up into the trees. This is the predominant theory now. They climbed up into the trees. They were jumping off these branches and trying to glide down. Well, wait a minute. How many of them went splat before they learned how to glide? And how many of them went splat before they grew feathers? And just growing primary feathers will not make that bird fly. It's got to have the secondary feathers to give it the lift. Well, maybe they evolved the feathers, but what's going to happen? It's still going to go splat. Why? Because their bones are too heavy. They've got to have hollow bones. So you've got to have the feathers, you've got to have the hollow bones, and you have to have all the other internal anatomy changes. All this has to happen. Where is the physical evidence all this happened? It's nowhere found. In other words, what is happening is a great claim from the evolutionists without providing any of the evidence. But wait a minute, here's the evidence. We've got it out on National Geographic. National Geographic gave us all the evidence we need. 1999, October 15th. National Geographic Society and the feathered dinosaur, Archaeoraptor. Pages and pages, even colored pictures of this intermediate to prove evolution is true. Well, let's take a look at what happened to this story. Red-faced and downhearted paleontologists are growing convinced that they have been snookered by a bit of fossil fakery from China. The feathered dinosaur specimen that they recently unveiled to much fanfare apparently combines the tail of a dinosaur with the body of a bird. Here's what happened. First thing they did wrong was smuggled the bones out of China. That's the first thing that went wrong. Second thing they did wrong was they pasted feathers onto this reptile and then claimed it was an intermediate link. That is not science. That is fraud. What did National Geographic do? Well, a couple months later, they printed out a small little article that you could barely find trying to retract it. But that didn't work. So later, a couple months after that, they printed multiple pages retracting their story. The whole thing was a fraud from the beginning. But yet, people bought into it. Wait a minute. Why? If evolution calls themselves a theory, if evolution says they're a scientific model, why must they continue to resort to false and misleading information? And the only answer we can come up with is they don't have the science to support what they're teaching. Therefore, they must continually resort to misinformation and deception by omission. Let's look at some more of these famous bird mistakes. 1993, the flightless bird on the cover of Time magazine, proving reptiles evolved into birds. Turned out not to be a bird, but a theropod dinosaur. 1996, feathered fossil proves some dinosaurs evolved into birds, right out of Science magazine. The feathers turned out to be an array of fibers, nothing to do with birds. One mistake after another. People are believing in evolution. They want to believe in evolution so bad that the evidence does not matter. All that matters is that we believe in evolution. That is no longer science. That is called religious faith. 1998, China, Proto-Archaeopteryx robusta. The comment about that one is this. You have to put it in perspective. To the people who wrote this paper, the chicken would be a feathered dinosaur. If you're going to make a great claim, you have to support it with real evidence. Not fraud, not mistakes, and not by omitting the evidence.